Welcome to Lesson 5. This is the 5th of 20 free Logic Games videos in the series. If you haven't had a chance to watch the first 4 videos, I encourage you to do so after you watch this one. They are drawn from I'll write it up here, the June 2007 LSAT. If you just go ahead and Google that, you can download it for free. It's the one LSAT you can get your hands on for free. And lessons 1 through 4 simply cover games 1 through 4 on that test. Now, the big difference between the first 4 lessons and lessons 5 through 20 is that 5 through 20 are arranged in approximate order of difficulty and by type. So first we'll do sequencing games, then grouping games, then some other games. Lessons 1 through 4, since they're simply drawn from one test, jump from an easy game to 3 that are much, much harder and of different types. But hopefully after this game, you'll go back and take a look at 1 through 4, and you'll also see at the end of every lesson, there's a top 5 list or a top 10 or a top something list. That is also true of games 1 through 4, so you'll want to go back and take a look at these. And after this lesson, we'll talk about top 5 things to consider when you're choosing a law school. So let's jump into game 5. As you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, lesson 5 covers game 2 in the June 2011 LSAT, PrepTest 63. So in order to follow this lesson, what you'll need to do is just go down to the website, crushtheLSAT.org, and purchase this group of official LSAT prep tests. It's volume 5. You'll see the link on our website. It only costs about $20, and lessons 5 through 20 will all draw on games from that book, from different practice tests in that book. And let's jump into this one. This is a very simple sequencing game. And you know it's a sequencing game if you read the questions. It says that each of the skydivers dives exactly once, one at a time. So let me write out the letters here. We have divers L, O, P, T, W, and Z. Okay. And they'll be diving in a certain order, 1 through 6. So we have a sequence here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And of course, I'll create a slot under each of those numbers to place my items in. Now let's take a look at the rules. So rule 1, T dives at some point before W. T before W. So I'm going to write T and then a line W. Now, it doesn't mean T dives immediately before W. If that were the rule, we'd write it out in a different way. T, W right next to each other. But this says something different. T could be right before W, but not necessarily right before. Just does have to dive at some point before W. Okay. Rule 2, L dives either first or last. So rule 2, L, why don't we say 1 or 6? If you watched lesson 1, you'll know that in a number of games, it's a great idea to create what we'll call 2 states of the world, 2 broad scenarios. And since here L can only be in one of 2 places, you can bet that we're going to come back after we write out the rules and create one scenario in which L is in spot 1 and one in which L is in spot 6. But we'll wait and do that before we go through all the rules. Okay, rule 3, neither W nor Z dives last. Well, I'll write it out, W, Z, not last, but where it's going to be even more helpful is when I write it in the diagram. Now, when things can't be true, I like to write it above the diagram with a little minus sign. So in the 6th slot, no Z and no W. And note that we just had another rule that involved W, the first rule. A crucial step after writing down your rules is to combine the rules. That's what lets you make the really important deductions that make solving the game a lot easier. So we'll go back and do that in a second, but we want to write out all the rules first. Rule 4, P dives after O or after L, but not both. Well, let's think about that, how to write that out. So we have P dives either after O, so that would look like this, or P dives after L, that would look like this. But not both, meaning what exactly? Meaning the arrangement, it's either OPL or it's LPO. And so I'll write an OR. I'll write an OR over there. Hope that's readable. And here again, one of the letters in this rule, in this case L, was already mentioned in a previous rule, rule 2. Now that we've written out all the rules, we're going to go and take that really important step of combining the rules. And one thing that's pretty clear here now is we want to create 2 states of the world, 2 big scenarios. We're going to have L in slot 1, and then let's write out another sequence here, 1 through 6, where we can put L in the 6th slot. Okay. And of course, all the rules that apply to scenario 1 are also going to apply to scenario 2. So let's do that. Rule 1, T comes before W. Well, when something can't be true, I said it's good to place it on top of the diagram. When something must be true, it's good to put it in the diagram like we just did with L. if something could be true, I like to write it underneath the diagram. So T before W. Now, if you combine it with the rule that W can't be last, what does that mean? That means T before W, that's going to appear in between slots 2 and 5. W can't go last. Okay, now let's write rule 1 over in scenario 2, and I should label these as world 1 and world 2 up above. So in world 2, T also before W. And of course the rule, no W, no Z in slot 6, well that doesn't matter for our purposes in world 2. Okay, next rule, L is in either slot 1 or slot 6. We covered that. Rule 3, we covered that. Now rule 4, here again we get to combine rules. O before P before L. Well, that scenario can occur where? Obviously in world 2, where L is last. So you have O and you have P in there. Then the other option, LPO, well that of course, now we're in world 1. P precedes O and L comes first. We have 5 slots to fill. Who's left? Z. I'll circle Z. Z is kind of our floater. I'll do that in the 2 scenarios. So we've written out what can't be true, what must be true, what could be true. But before we go on to another question, always ask, is there anything else that must be true? Is there any other deduction I can make? And why don't you pause for a moment and think about that? This is a really crucial deduction. You get a lot of credit if you go through the process thinking about deductions and come up with this one. Just pause for a moment and see there's another piece of information we can fill in here. All right, in world 1, we'll ask ourselves, so T and W go between slots 2 and 5. Okay. P and O have to follow L. Z can float around, but Z can't go in 6. Question, who must go in slot 6? Has to be O. In scenario 1, has to be O. Now, you probably would have figured that out later on while doing the game, but really helpful if you can make these deductions as early as possible. Okay, so that's our master sketch. Not going to touch it, not going to tamper with it. I'll draw a nice thick line underneath. And you can see I'm using up a lot of room here. As time goes on, we'll try to use a little less room. But let's jump into the questions. The first one, your typical acceptable arrangement question. Which of the following could be an accurate list? So what do? We take rule 1, apply it to all of the answer choices until we can knock one out. Then we go back to rule 2, do the same, rule 3, do the same, etc. We'll start with rule 1. T has to come before W. So answer A is okay, answer B is okay, but answer choice C. W comes first, you'll see T comes third, so C is out. Why don't you pause the video for a moment, take a look at rule 2, see what you can rule out, rule 3, etc., and then we'll come back and take a look. So it looks like rule 2 gets rid of E. I'll note that that's rule 2. We already got rid of C. Rule 3 eliminates A. That's rule 3. And rule 4 gets rid of D. You can't have P followed by both O and L. So answer choice B on this question. This was rule 4. All right, which one's next? Well, I want to jump to a question that gives me some details. So actually, we'll come back to 7. Let's do number 8. New slide here. So if O dives from the plane last, each of the following could be true except. So 4 choices here that could be true, but one is impossible, and that's the one that will be our answer choice. And let's see if we can get this started without even writing anything out. So answer choice A, T goes 4th. When we take a quick look in the upper right, could T be 4th and then what? W would be 5th. Does that work? Seems like it does. What we want to do here is don't dwell on any one choice. If it looks like it can probably work, so choice B, W goes 4th. Well, if that happened, T precedes it. Who could go 5th? Well, it looks like P could go 5th or Z could go 5th. That looks fine. How about C? O goes 5th. Now, if you take a look at the diagram, can that happen? You can see right away, no, O has to be followed by P. And of course, P can't be in slot 6 because 6 is taken. So right there, answer C. We didn't have to take any time to draw anything out. Of course, if we were unsure, we would have. But this question we could get through pretty quickly. Next question, question 9, a question that gives us another detail. And always remember that the detail in question 8 applies only to question 8. And we'll see a detail in question 9 applies only to question 9. It's not a new rule that applies to every question. It's particular to that question. So question 9, new slide here. If Z dives immediately after W, then which of the following must be false? Well, must be false. That means must be false in both scenarios, world 1 and world 2. So let's take a look and let's draw this out. So T, we know from one rule that T is followed by W, and then it would be W next to Z. When you take a look at scenario 1, we have 4 empty slots there. We've got to fit T, W, Z in there. Who else goes in those 4 slots? Well, it looks like P is going to have to be in there somewhere. And I'll note, by the way, that this is question 9. What must be false? How about in World 2? Similar story. So we have T followed at some point by W and Z right next to each other. And now we have 5 slots to fill. We have what? We have O and P also going to go in there somewhere. So that just gives us a sense of what's going on. So which of the following must be false? How about A? Well, A we can get rid of very quickly, right? L can definitely go first. Answer B, T dives third. Well, let's see. Let's take a look at World 1. If T were third, WZ would then be 4th and 5th. Okay. P has to fit in there, so P would be what, 2nd? So that looks okay. Again, we don't want to dwell on it. If for any reason you are unsure, well, we'll put a little tilde by it. How about that? If you thought you may have to come back to it. But we'll take a look at answer C. Z drives third. Could that be true? Well, in World 1, definitely not. Z would be third, W would be 2nd. There'd be no room for T. But how about in World 2? Could it be true in World 2? If Z were third, you'd have W 2nd. T would come before that in slot 1. Who would go in 4 and 5? OP. So that looks okay. But again, if you were uncertain, we could write a tilde by it. Let's take a look at answer D. Could P be 4th? Well, let's see. In World 1, if P were 4th, and you can see we have those 4 slots to fill, where would WZ go? Well, of course, they can't be in 5 or 6. And they can't be in 2 or 3 because they have to be preceded by T. So not possible in scenario 1. How about scenario 2? Could P go 4th? Well, same story. Where would WZ go? If P is 4th, it has to be preceded by W and Z, which must be preceded by T. And our rule says P also has to be preceded by O. Nobody could go in slot number 5. D, clearly the correct answer. So a good idea not to dwell on a particular choice. If you're not certain, maybe come back to it. And here, D, clearly the right answer. All right, question 10, new slide here. Another question that gives us a detail, so that's why I like to jump on this one next. If T dives immediately after L, okay, we're in scenario 1. And this is question 10, we'll note that. Each of the following could be true except, so 4 things that could be true, but 1 that can't be true. So here, let's make it easier to visualize things. Let's write in what we know. Because in this scenario, L is first, O is last. T comes right after L, so T is 2nd. So we only have to fill 3 slots here. And fill them with who? You can see in our master sketch that W is going to have to be in here. P is going to have to be in here. And Z is going to have to be in here. And by the way, in the master sketch, in World 1, we could have just gone and crossed out O altogether, right? P became a floater in this group of slots 2 through 5. But in any event, each of the following could be true except. Let's see, answer A. O dives third. Could that be true? We didn't even have to draw this out. Answer A. So once again, our master sketch with 2 scenarios, really a big help. Okay, now we'll take a look at question 7. Good to take a look at it now because now we know the rules very well and we know arrangements that are possible and that are not possible. We have a good sense of the game. So let's take a look at 7. Which of the following must be true? Answer A, at least 2 people dive after L. Gone immediately. Not true in scenario 2. Answer B, similar story. Scenario 1 rules that out. How about C? At least 2 people dive after P. So what do? We ask ourselves, could we have a situation in which only 1 person dives after P or no person dives after P? Well, sure, look at World 2. P could be 5th. Could also be 5th in World 1, by the way. And that circle sort of erased P, but you can see P there. So C is out. How about D? At least 2 people dive after T. Well, here again, we ask, could there be a situation in which only 1 person dives after T? We just look at the master sketch. World 1, T is followed by W, and then, of course, by O. So that's out. World 2, T followed by W, and then L. So that's out. Answer D, correct answer. So this one, very simple sequencing game. You'll see the goal up here to try to get this done in about 6 minutes. After you've done the 20 videos and taken a couple practice tests, that's where you want to be. And by the way, let me circle answer D. That was the answer. And now we'll jump to the top 5 list. But before we do, if you have any comments, please post them. We'd love to hear what you have to say, and it could be very helpful for other viewers. Comments about this question, comments about sequencing games in general. Comments are more than welcome. If you found the video helpful, please click the like button. Be sure to subscribe. We're going to post some lessons on logical reasoning questions. So now let's take a look at the top 5 list. Before we take a look at this list, let me just skip ahead a slide. On the subject of what to consider when choosing a law school, folks could talk for hours about that subject. It'd be a great idea if you take a look at these 5 articles in the near future. They'll give you a lot of great ideas to think about. Another thing that may interest you, if you get on our website, scroll down to the very bottom right-hand side. The book Law School Confidential is kind of the Bible on everything to know about law school. So that may interest you. But just a quick look here at top 5 things to consider when choosing a law school. One thing I hope you'll notice right away is that rankings only listed number 3 on this list. There's no doubt that rankings give you very helpful information, but you definitely don't want to rely on them too much. With law school tuition as high as it is, the first thing you want to think about is cost. What the tuition is, what sort of scholarships you may be eligible for, what kind of scholarship money the school might offer you, which, by the way, is somewhat negotiable. If your LSAT score and your GPA are both higher than the average of other students in the admitted class, that can give you a real advantage. The last thing you want to do is pile up a huge amount of debt unless you know that the future return on that investment is going to make it worth your while. If you go to law school knowing that you want to become, let's say, a corporate lawyer someday and make a lot of money in the big city and you'll have no problem paying down your loans, well, that's one thing. On the other hand, suppose you see yourself working in family law or immigration law or working for a nonprofit. Then the last thing you ever want to do is take on a lot of debt. So the first thing you got to realize is that going to law school is a business decision. It's a huge, huge financial commitment. And that should always be at the top of your mind. Number 2 is location. And that's significant in 2 ways. First of all, obviously, the sort of life you're going to be living for 3 years. Are you a city person? Are you a suburbs person? Obviously very different, but also where you go to law school is going to have a lot of impact on where you can work after you graduate. If you want to have the freedom to get a great job anywhere, well, then you have a big advantage if you go to one of the so-called T14 law schools. If you don't know that phrase, go ahead and Google it. But if you don't go to one of those really elite law schools, you want to make sure you go to school in the same region where you want to work after law school. Number 3, rankings. And of course, the best known rankings are the U.S. News rankings. Here you'll see the link. A couple things. First of all, when you open it on the right-hand side, you want to click on Table View. You might also want to click on the link that says Read the Methodology. How do they come up with these rankings? Something you want to learn about. Number 4, going back to the subject of employment prospects. You'll see this link here, ILRG, which we pointed to in an earlier lesson. The nice thing about that link is it gives you lots of data, including 2 columns you'll definitely want to look at. EMPL at grad, that means employment after graduation, followed by employment 10 months after graduation. In the United States, there are 196 law schools that are ABA accredited. If you look at the information about employment after graduation for, let's say, the first 50, and then compare it with the last 46, the last quartile, and you'll see there are 4 pages on that link. The differences in employment are vast. So if you see that a school has a low rate of employment after graduation, you want to be very suspicious, and you want to be even more suspicious if the school has high tuition. Without naming names, there are a bunch of schools on there that you definitely want to avoid. And then a final point about choosing law school, number 5, offerings. What does that mean? Well, basically everything other than the standard curriculum itself. In your first year of law school, you're going to take the same classes as the first-year students at every other law school in America, and probably won't have a chance to do a whole lot outside of the classroom, certainly not in your first semester. But after that, different schools distinguish themselves from others by offering lots and lots of different things for you to do outside the classroom. And when you get on a school's website, you want to go ahead and search for things like experiential learning, legal clinics, student law journals, moot court centers programs, specialty. Sometimes that word is a good one, because all of those subjects are surprisingly hard to find on a lot of law schools' websites. So I hope this video was helpful, and hope you'll join us for lesson 6. To get there, all you have to do is click on the Crush the LSAT icon in the lower right-hand corner here. That'll bring you to the YouTube channel. Click on Playlists, and you'll see a playlist titled Logic Games Lessons 1 through 20. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next video.